New York in the 56, I think
56.
it was. Having studied and worked with Ben Graham, what was the dream? What was the ambition?
I was interested in reading and taking courses at the university. I took my father-in-law's course in psychology. And I thought I might go to law school. I knew there were a whole bunch of subjects I wanted to read about. And then I sort of stumbled into this partnership a few months later because 7 members of the family said, we want you to handle our investments. And I didn't want to do it one at a time or tell them what I was doing. So I put the 7 together in a partnership that had $105,100 in it. And I thought that was it. And a few months later, a fellow named Homer Dodge, who'd been a stockholder at Graham Newman, came out, saw me in Omaha, and he said Graham Newman was liquidating, and he said he'd asked Ben where to put his money, and Ben said maybe Warren would be a good choice. So he joined me for, I think, about $100,000 at the time. And then 4 months later, some fellow in Omaha that read the legal notice, actually, a friend of mine called me up and said, what are you doing? And I told him, and he did it. So yeah, I just kind of stumbled along.
You kind of stumble along.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you have a partnership.
And part of the partnership was buying what looked like cheap stocks. Berkshire Hathaway looked like a cheap stock. It was a terrible business.
What was your ambition then? Now you have a vehicle.
Yeah. Well, I started out by thinking I was a textile expert. What happened was, right at that period, the textile business was good for a very short period of time. Then we went into other businesses.
Why was the insurance business attractive?
Well, it does control money. You've got somebody that's doing a decent job on the insurance end in underwriting. It gives you money to invest on my end.
How much of your revenue comes from the insurance business?
Well, a lot comes from insurance, and then we have a lot of money that's generated by insurance. So insurance has propelled our growth. There's no question about that.
Because it gave you money to
It gave us money to both invest in marketable securities and also money to buy businesses outright.
And then in 1965, you have a chance to take over
Right.
Berkshire. What happened?
We didn't get out of the textile business, but I decided that to the extent we could, we'd try to add on other things. Interestingly enough, Charlie, I'd have been better off if I'd done all the subsequent things without putting them in Berkshire originally. I mean, if you just talk financially. The textile business was a drag for 20 years. So if instead of buying these things for Berkshire, we just bought them in a separate entity. Looking back, it was a big, fundamental, wrong decision from a financial standpoint.
To get involved in the textile business at all?
Yeah. I should have just gotten out of that and gone on and done these other things.
But tell me why you didn't?
It's just my personality. I mean, I'm driving a car after 8 years. I'm living in the same house after 47 years.
Oh, the stock market.
The stock market just went crazy, and it was a little like, in 1999 and 2000. I mean, I was left behind, and I didn't want to do things I didn't understand and that didn't make sense to me. But I also didn't like sitting there while everybody else was running rings around me, and my partners were probably not saying it, but they might think, has this guy lost it? So I gave them all the money back, and I gave them the shares of Berkshire, and got a lot of them myself as part of that.
So you had a stake in Berkshire.
Right, and I actually bought more, but I just decided I'd put all my money in Berkshire and ride with it.
And ride with Berkshire as a vehicle,
as a kind of an extension, a corporate extension of me. So it was about 85. I mean, 20 years later, before we got out of
the textile business.
We got out of the textile business. I said it's a little bit like watching a parade with all these other textile companies, and you stand up on your tiptoes, and then everybody else stands up on their tiptoes too. And all that, you don't see any better, and your legs hurt. And that's what happened with textiles.
Warren bought into the company without my knowing him. That's why I say luck really plays a role in people's lives. It just does. A lot of people said stiff arm him, he's buying too much stock. He means you no good. And my native instinct was, let's take a look. Let's see what he's like. And everything I learned about him was very good. So I asked him to come and take a look at the company in which he just bought these shares. He had to write me a letter when he owned 5% of the company saying, "Dear Mrs. Graham, I've just bought 5% of your company, and I mean you no harm. And I think it's a great company, and I know it's Graham owned and Graham run, and that's fine with me." And so I got to know him, and I thought, whoa, this guy's really terrific. So after he joined our board, he used to come to board meetings with about 20 annual reports, and he would take me through these annual reports. I mean, it was like going to business school with Warren Buffett.
Couldn't have a better teacher.
No, it was wonderful.
Tell me how the dilemma plays itself out for you.
The odds are good, Charlie, that one way or another, we will find reasonably intelligent things to do with most of the money, but they won't be as intelligent as the things that we could find 30 or 40 years ago with much smaller amounts of money. Nowhere close.
Because there are few there.
They're right. It just can't. It won't happen.
What's the test? What test does it have to meet?
It has to be a business I understand. It has to be a company that I think has some kind of enduring competitive advantage. It has to be a management that I like and trust, and it has to be at a reasonably attractive price. Price is the least important, but it's still important.
And you'd like to own all of it?
I'd like to own
But
all
not
of it,
necessarily.
but not necessarily.
It's a very small, it's a small field to...
It's a small field when you get to have as much money as we have. It was a big field 30 or 40 years ago.
You can see the numbers immediately. You got to make an evaluation of the management. How can you do that so quick? You just have, at this time in your life, it's an instinctive knowledge.
Yeah, it's not going to always be right, but it's usually going to be right.
One more time for the criteria. It is, in terms of an earnings that...
We're looking for
earnings
75
record,
million pre-tax.
plus 75 million. You're looking at management. You're looking at...
a simple business, one I can understand, which really means simple. And we're looking for management in place, and we're looking for a seller that knows the price he wants for his business.
The seller must know the price.
And if I don't know what I'm doing, I don't do it.
Well, we've established that you know what you're doing.
No, not always.
Coca-Cola is one example. The value of your holdings gone down by about $8 billion, haven't they?
You hit it right on the button. Let's keep this quiet, though.
I mean, do you ever say, man, what am I doing here? My commitment to the end is...
Looking back, I made a mistake by not selling.
You could have sold it at the time, 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Something, yeah. But no, I don't look back on things. Yeah. A lot of what you see coming down the road as really large looming problems revolve around promises, and we won't, in my view, ever change the promise on Social Security. We may change it when you get into Medicare or something of that sort.
No politician will suggest that.
No, they wouldn't. But this country has incredible resources. It has more resources per capita than it had 5 or 10 or 20 years ago. I mean, we're not going backwards economically as a nation, but we have made a lot of promises. And we could have a very rich family, Charlie, and our income could keep going up. But if I promised, the elder members of the family that they would, all live like multimillionaires, we could get in trouble.
If you're looking to start a new side hustle or even a new business, check out the link in the description below.